Welcome to When Spreadsheets Hit the Fan, a Birdview podcast. This is a show for leaders in fast-growing professional service organizations looking for the latest conversations around service delivery best practices. Let's get into the show.
Hello and welcome to When Spreadsheets Hit the Fan. I'm your host, John Litterick. In today's episode, I talked to Shawn Freeman. Shawn is an Alberta-based tech expert and entrepreneur. In 2011, Shawn founded TWT Group, a managed IT service provider with a human touch. After 9 years of hard work, commitment, and inspiring growth, TWT Group was acquired by Fully Managed, an international IT service management company. Today, Shawn is a VP for Fully Managed out in Alberta. In short, Shawn is an architect of tomorrow's technology. He's a clear visionary, and he's a humble leader. Here's a fun fact. I love this because I love dad jokes. Shawn won a dad joke competition in San Diego. And the thing is, he isn't even a dad. On today's show, we discuss what does real transformation look like. Shawn has some great insights on how to do this type of transformation. And of course, we'll see a lot of insights from Shawn and his experience with spreadsheets. If you like what you hear, please follow the show and leave a rating wherever you're listening. Let's jump right into it. So, Shawn, you've been around the proverbial block, just like all of our guests. You've been doing this a long time. You've been around it hundreds of times. So let's get right to it. What is the biggest mistake you see organizations making and that they should stop doing right away?
Two simple words, digital transformation. Companies use a lot of Band-Aids when they should really be getting a transplant done. Pretend they're doing digital transformation, but in fact, they're really just creating more future problems, kicking the can down the road. True digital transformation is when you become the company that would replace you. For example, if taxis had become Uber before Uber did. It's not quite easy, and it requires you to drop your ego and put some hard work in.
Yeah, well said. I like that. People are doing Band-Aids when they should be doing transplants. That was quite humorous and really great point. I think it's going to be a great show. So, Shawn, let's get into it. Tell us where you've seen an example of someone making this mistake, and we want you to quantify it. In tangible things like this, but also intangible things. Like brand and reputation. We ask all our guests this question.
Yeah, for sure. I see a lot of companies think that digital transformation is just buying a new app like Dropbox or something of the sort and inviting the whole team and assuming it's going to fix all their problems. They do a dozen of those and they keep adding all these apps onto their stack. And then they realize none of them work together. And actually, they often slow things down with all your processes in your business.
Very cool. That really makes a lot of sense to me. So what should organizations do instead?
Yeah, that's the obviously next question. I think organizations need to ask themselves, what technology would a company create that would put us out of business? And keep asking until they come up with an answer.
Yeah, and that seems to be a common thing like the really great companies do. I know Jeff Bezos does that. I read his biography, and that's core to his philosophy is he wants to be the one that puts the current version of Amazon out of business because he knows that's how he's going to have longevity, right? Because he remembered how he put the publishing business he disrupted the publishing business. So yeah, a really, really good point and great reminder for, the business leaders out there that are listening to this podcast. Okay. So this is the early part of the show where we challenge our guests, no pressure if you can or can't do it, but we want to see if you can boil your wisdom down into a simple stop start maxim. Up for the challenge?
Yeah, no problem. So I'd say the companies need to stop being lazy and cheap with their digital transformation strategies and start acting like new technology will put them out of business.
Cool. I like it. Well done. Well played. So, a lot of times when I'm listening to our different guests, what they're saying is it's sort of common sense, current business ideology. But the real interesting thing is when you ask the guest, why are people not doing the right behaviors? Why are they making this common set of mistakes? I think understanding why we had one guest that was asking, make data-driven decisions. It's pretty common sense, but it was interesting their take on why organizations weren't doing it. They suggested it was the tyranny of the urgent. So why do you think people aren't doing that? There's so many good examples out there. Like you gave the example of if taxis had done it before Uber, that, Uber wouldn't be where it is. So what do you think is driving this common set of mistakes?
Yeah, I think today profits are good in your company and it's easy. It's easy to just keep ticking along and adding a few small improvements and tweaking them. A lot of people, they're busy at their jobs and they really need to kind of get out of the weeds and shift their focus to working on the business. Additionally, they need to accept that the way they're currently doing things isn't the future. It might bruise an ego or two. And companies often don't dedicate enough time or resources to their employees to strategize further out and just kind of do this deep thinking and figure out what the what the disruption is going to be that's coming.
Very good. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that's what's driving people to do the wrong behavior, even though they know it's the wrong behavior. So, from your perspective, you're sharing something from your personal experience. There's examples out there like Uber and Amazon. What other case studies or empirical evidence do you have to support your position? I think that's always
Yeah.
interesting for our listeners.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy to find things that were disrupted, and we can look back and say, well, that was obvious that they did it that way, and it makes so much sense. I mentioned Uber already, Airbnb, the iPhone, like just you probably had 10 things on your desk that are now in your iPhone, and those have really just consolidated. I think technology is just going to keep doing that for more and more industries and ways of doing business.
Yeah, and a lot of organizations think you can't do that to our industry, right? But you can. I mean, it's changing the game now, and AI is just going to even accelerate this super fast pace, right? We've had the convergence of cloud media, software as a service, and it's changed everything. But the next wave is coming. When you look at things like AI and nanotechnology, 5G speeds for the internet, the convergence of that's going to be, I don't think we're going to know what the world's going to look like in 15 years. So I agree with you. Let's say somebody's listening and they realize that they think they've been doing digital transformation, but they've really just been making incremental changes due to things are good, profits are good. And they're starting to realize, wait a minute, what if profits aren't good? And I really need to stop doing the Band-Aids that Shawn is saying and do the transplant. What more flavor context can you give around going to the behavior that you're advising?
Yeah, I think if you just accept the fact that every industry and every single company is going to be disrupted in one way or another, that if you accept that as true, then you can move forward and you can strategize around that. You're seeing big banks get disrupted by fintech. You're seeing hotels, you're seeing government get disrupted by fintech, currency, all those things, right? And if they can be disrupted, and any other little business can be disrupted, somebody's going to come in and do it when they get the time. So wouldn't you want to be the company that's doing the disruption? That seems like a pretty good long-term goal to me. And I think if you're a long-term planning leader, that would be something that you should be thinking about.
Yeah, I like that. Just assume you will be disrupted. Yeah, I think if you just have that thought process, you can't go wrong, right? That's good. I like that. That resonated with me. So talk to me about some examples of where you've seen people do it right. They really, they got ahead of the disruption. They were the disruptors. Talk to me about
For sure. Yeah, I've seen companies go from a full paper operation, old school accounting, order taking, processing credit cards at the machine, the physical machine where you took the imprint of the card, all the way to fully digital. They created their own software specific to their niche just because they couldn't find one that worked well enough for them. And at the same time, the fears you're going to lay people off. Well, they didn't. They actually kept them. They just repurposed them into better, more skilled roles because they grew so much. Their existing staff got to learn and do more valuable work. Revenue and profits went up. People, they enjoyed their job more. Their customers enjoyed working with them more because things were streamlined and they could place an order by themselves. They didn't have to wait on hold, or send a fax in or go into a store. And then additionally, once they did perfect their software, they actually realized that they were the only one with that software and there was no other softwares out there. So then they took it and started selling it as another product. So then they started selling it to their competitors, and then their software business outgrew their original company. It reminds me of a quote from Mark Andreessen in 2011. He said, "Software is eating the world." And it's true. If there's something that software isn't solving or making easier today, it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a very similar story to the history of easy projects. We've been in business for 23 years. It started out as an internal solution. Originally, the organization did software development for companies, charged for the work and needed a good way to just kind of organize the projects and organize the billing. And so built an internal tool to make that more streamlined. And, pretty soon the people that were getting the reports were like, how are you producing these reports? I showed them the internal process and they're like, could you build that for us? And an idea was launched, and that was the birth of easy projects, right? It was first to solve an internal problem. All we do is sell the project management, professional services, automation software. So yeah, we've lived that Yeah, great examples there, Shawn. Like digital transformation, can be a very short process, can be a long process. What do you think in general, though? Like if someone was listening to this and they started to really think about true digital transformation, not the band-aids, but the true transformation they're talking about, the transplant. What do you think realistically they should set their mind around the time frame? What do you think? What does your gut tell you?
Yeah, I think it's really an ongoing process. I don't think it ever is finished. There's always something to make more efficient and better. But if you're going kind of from a traditional operation to a mostly digital, not a lot of paper, a really online customer experience, I think it's not a small thing. Obviously, it depends. The bigger company you are, the harder it's going to be. If you're really dedicated though, and you brought in the team and you'd invested the money in the R&D, you could probably have a solid result in 2 to 3 years. Software is not hard to build. It's pretty quick. You can get a minimum viable product done pretty fast and see if it makes sense. And then if you wanted to monetize that as a new company, a software that you sell to your competitors, you could do that probably within 5 years if you did it right.
That's awesome. That's good. And anything that I've read on the topic, and this is a topic that I've read a lot on. I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Innovator's Dilemma. That's when my eyes were open to this. That's pretty consistent, whatever I've read. So good to hear your experience on that. So
for sure. And it also kind of frames the timing for when somebody's going to disrupt you too, if you don't do it.
now that's a gem right there. Yes, that's right. It's not just about how long it's going to take you, but it's also when the competitive threat's going to happen. Interesting. I've never actually never heard anybody put it that way. That's pretty good. I'm going to give you credit for that once, and I'm going to steal it and use it all the time for myself.
Awesome.
That's good. Okay, so this is the part of the show where we always want to talk about, like, okay, how do we do it? Okay, so great theory about what we should stop doing, what we should start doing, but what's step one? What's step two? Let's talk about step one.
Yeah, for sure. I think if we look at our teams, and you can always find somebody that's pretty technically savvy, they're always trying to get everybody to try new tools out and do things in a more techy digital way. And I think just finding and highlighting those people and bringing them in and saying, hey, what's your point of view? What do you think is going to disrupt our business? And how can you help us, get ahead of that? So find the people that are already in your business. They already understand your company. And then, they're already tech savvy, so they know what's possible.
Okay, great advice. Easy one, I think, to implement with a little bit of thought. Very practical. Okay, maybe one or two other steps after step one.
So step two, I would create a R&D team. If it's 1, 2, or 3 people. There's lots of grants, the Shred Innovation grants, and depends where you are in the country. There's a whole bunch of different innovation grants that you can go and you can use to help fund these things. So it's not just off your bottom line. That's a big misconception that a lot of people have. You're creating IP as well, right? So you're creating an asset. And then, if you're not great at software or it's very, very unknown to you, you could find a software company to partner with, get them in to help you kind of guide you through the way. And then, let the person that's running your R&D team be creative, create a lab, maybe, a subset of your business and your customers that they can play around and test with. They can create that minimum viable software and see how they like it, see how they need to scale it. And then don't forget the long-term vision of your monetization, right? Because all this will just be an investment in the future returns.
Great advice and very practical. I think most people listening to that would be actionable. I think the idea of, wherever you live, whatever country, see if the government, whether at like a federal, state, provincial level or municipal level, has got some kind of R&D programs available for you. Like there's lots in Canada where we're located, but find the equivalent if you live in the States or the UK. They're out there, right? Governments recognize that business now is a partnership, and a lot of these grants exist. You're right. You don't have to take it right off the bottom line. So good advice on that. Okay, Shawn, we all know that you can have a great idea, a great plan. It just sounds right. I like to give the example that here in Canada, everybody talks about if you own a Tim Hortons, you're going to be really wealthy. But I'm sure, there is somewhere out there a story where a Tim Hortons didn't work, right? Like even the best business idea, the most stable business idea, something can go wrong. So in your experience, have you ever seen someone who did it right? They weren't thinking about the Band-Aid. They went all in to do the transplant, the metaphor that you used. They were doing a lot of the things that you're saying. We're getting the RD grants, and yet it just didn't work out. Have you ever seen that? Or is there any lessons you could share with our listening audience?
Yeah, I think like any business venture, there's always going to be risks. You need to manage them. A big focus on change management, obviously putting together proper kind of software methodologies, coming up with a minimum viable product and testing it with the business before you spend so much money that you can't recover. Doing things like that just to mitigate your risk and then pivot when you realize it's not working. Fail fast. And that's kind of a motto for tech startups these days. Get to the point where it fails and then go the other way, right? Figure out the direction you need to go. The great thing about technology, it's pretty easy and fairly cheap to get to that MVP stage and make changes. And then you'll be able to tell that it's worth continuing, and you'll be able to see like, oh, there is interest from my competitors in this, and or my own business is like begging me to grow this faster. You'll be able to see those wins, right?
Excellent. All right. Great advice. I really want to thank you for your time. It was a good conversation. I think if I had to like personally think about one thing I take away, it's like, remember that digital transformation is really about scale, right? Incremental fixes that use digital technologies is great. You want to keep doing that, but it's not really digital transformation. Digital transformation is when you really take the time to change the game and do something that would literally put you out of business and create a new business model. That's digital transformation. It's a good reminder. I'm thinking about it now. I'm thinking about other businesses and are they doing it? I found it a very fun topic, so I really want to thank you. Hope you'll be a guest in future episodes. We're doing something new. We really want our guests, because the name of the program is When Spreadsheets Hit the Fan. I want sort of your best spreadsheet story, good or bad. Have you seen the spreadsheets hit the fan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a tech guy, and IT security is huge and top of mind these days. And so spreadsheets are obviously they're the catalyst to macros. Macros are the bane of cybersecurity. So definitely seen hundreds of macros come across, and always hit. I've got this trauma that comes up when it's like, do you want to enable? And I'm like always scared to hit enable, and usually I don't. So yeah, macros definitely are the hitting the fan of spreadsheets. So
okay, very good, very good. That security background, interesting. Okay, Shawn, we're going to have you back soon. Thanks for being a guest. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, John. It was great.
You've been listening to When Spreadsheets Hit the Fan, a Birdview podcast. Keep connected with us by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you like what you've heard, please rate the show. That helps us to keep delivering the latest and best practices for professional service teams. Until next time.